Welcome to the party, pal. In 2014, WE Tech released an entire line of stamped steel gas blowback SMGs, and they've recently celebrated their 10th anniversary. But don't let that age fool you, it's still a gas subgun that can hold its own, even against the hyper-competitive arms race on today's airsoft battlefields. I give you the WE Tech MP5A3. How you doing, everyone? I'm Bada Bing, and you have tuned into the 8 years later review. Honestly, this should have been like a 10 years later video, as it's been owned by 2 other people before I got a hold of it. But seeing as it's been 8 years since my initial review, that's what we're going to go with. I'm delighted you could join me. Grab yourself a cup of coffee and let's take you through it. Speaking of which, if you enjoy coffee as much as I do, I think you might love my own brand of coffee, Bada Bing Coffee. Accompanying this YouTube channel, I decided to get into coffee roasting, and I specialise in single origin coffee, which is ethically sourced, and all personally roasted and posted by me. So whether you're about to watch my videos, hit the gym, venture out for a run, or boost your mental focus at work, Bada Bing Coffee can take good care of you. And bonus, you'll be helping support this channel. In a time where monetization is extremely hindered because of the nature of the content, every single order really does help a ton. I ship all across the world, so you don't have to just live in the UK to benefit from my coffee. This has been such a cool thing to do, and I'm having a lot of fun roasting, so check the link in the description and try for yourself. So, the WE MP5. I've rolled back the years on this particular setup to a time that is quite special to me. To look at it, you might be thinking to yourself, well, all you've got there is a claw mount and a cheap airsoft red dot sight. What is special about that? Well, it's something of a legacy build. This is exactly how I set up my first MP5s from when I was a kid. Only back then I never had the money for a torch grip, and certainly not the kind to afford the extravagance of a real surefire 628 like I do now. Yes, that's a Buffy the Vampire Slayer poster on my wall, so that's a big indication of the time period right there. Man, I had a crush on her. I think we all did, didn't we? Moving along from reminiscing about Sarah Michelle Gellar and back to my setup that I had 25 years ago. This vintage Tokyo Marui red dot sight on the claw mount really makes it. It feels so natural when you're bringing up the sights, like I'd never left. And it's so good to be back with Baby Bing's MP5 loadout. I think my 14-year-old self would be proud that I've recreated his SMG. Now the WE MP5, how is it going? As of making this video, it is operationally spot on, much to the disappointment of WE haters out there. As this has a lot of years and miles on the clock, of course there's going to be a few things to report on, which I will get into. As you may know, WE Tech don't tend to use the strongest of materials, so replacing things should not be an unusual concept. It's like Jason Statham movies, you know exactly what you're getting into.
I'm not interested, I'm retired. We've got a job for you, I'm in.
What I do requires a certain mindset. I do assignments, like transporting. I'm a beekeeper, but I'm also a mechanic that hunts megalodons, do you know what I mean? And I still had to pretend I was in a fucking Cirque du Soleil show.
Beginning my replacement parts history, and part number 50, the burst ratchet pull or leaf spring was the first replacement. This is a thin metal piece which times the burst mechanism to allow for 3 shots before the trigger pack resets. When it breaks, it'll reset after each shot, just like in semi-auto, thus rendering 3-shot burst inoperable. I made a video some years ago which showed you how to replace it, and to this day it remains a common failure point of the Apache series. Honestly, it's no big deal, it's just annoying that it's so fragile, so if you enjoy novelties like burst mode, it's best to buy a bunch of these. The hop-up chamber was my next replacement, and quite possibly due to user error. As the chamber is a 2-piece design, its threading point, where it meets the outer barrel, is stupidly thin. If you happen to be upgrading your barrel and rubber, ensure both halves of the hop-up meet up correctly before threading on the outer barrel. Now the pinhole, where it secures to the receiver, can also be broken off if it's not perfectly aligned before you replace the pin. The third part that I replaced was also user error. I damaged the nozzle with a screwdriver when I was unclipping one of the plastic guide tabs. And lastly, while making this very video I had my very first stoppage. Isn't it amazing that after all this time, thousands upon thousands of happy snappy miles on the clock, the nozzle spring finally popped. No bolt carrier disintegration, no broken hammer, the nozzle spring. That's the parts history out of the way. What about general wear and tear? The magazine catch is constantly used, and it's a locking piece which is not made of steel, and it's also relied upon to hold onto the heavy magazines. Now there is a small degree of wear on that flat edge, nothing too serious for the time being. A couple of months ago, the catch would not return flat with the receiver. This indicated that it wasn't securing the magazines properly, and began dropping them when you started shooting. When I took it apart, it turns out there was a lot of gunk built up underneath. The paint had stripped away from the parts and backed up in the mechanism. After a good brushing out, it returned to normal. Looking at the bolt carrier itself, the thread for the nozzle guide screw has worn out over the many takedowns, and it can no longer accept the screw to lock in the left nozzle guide. I've actually been leaving the nozzle guide in place without the screw. Just between me and you, it's been like this for years, and it's been fine. The nose of the bolt carrier that the cocking tube engages has some mushrooming going on. To be fair, it glides smoothly. If I can be bothered, I may sand it flat, but I'm just not concerned with it right now. The cocking support tube is that heavy block of steel you've seen me slap many times. There's nothing to say, it's still here, it's still doing its thing. The notch on the external cocking tube still looks brand new, or close to it, surprisingly. It's not giving me any reason to stop enjoying the HK slap, so I'll continue to do what it does best. Opening up the trigger pack on a 10-year-old gun, and I'm delighted to say that it's still using the same original factory parts from when it was first made. Apart from part number 50, of course. The contact points exhibit minor paint wear, but it shows no sign of marring or concerning damage from the thousands of cycles. These components are not made of steel either. It is a WE, remember. The system seemingly operates without any stress at all. To be fair to WE's design, it's not as difficult to disassemble and reassemble the trigger pack as you might think. The trigger spring is somewhat fiddly to get back into place, that's about it. In this simplicity, negatively, its design of the burst feature is an unrealistic weak point for both part number 50 and the fact that it carries a memory to the burst feature. So you could come off a barrage of semi-auto fire or fully auto, and your burst might get off 1 or 2 shots instead of 3, something the VFC does not do. That's about all to report on for the trigger pack. Recently, the collapsible A3 stock has decided to begin collapsing under fire. You can see here that as I'm pulling the MP5 tightly into my shoulder, the stock buckles under its recoil. It's time to get out the Dremel for this one and straighten up those locking grooves. You can see the edges have worn off over the years. From the looks of it, all the intricate pieces that make up the stock assembly are not available separately from part suppliers. I would have to buy a whole new A3 stock assembly, which is a pain because they're quite expensive. So much so that cheaper fixed stocks are suddenly more attractive. Over the years, you might be wondering about improvements, and yes, you don't get to this ripe old gas blowback age without some minor adjustments underneath, so let's talk about improvements. First of all, one of the easiest and best mods you can do to the WE MP5 system is to stick on a piece of hooked Velcro tape inside of the MP5's magwell. If you're not familiar with these MP5s, it has a set of tabs on the magazine, which are activated by the BB follower. When it fires the last BB, the follower trips up the tab, and that indexes upon a lever on the trigger pack, and this is connected to the valve striker, which then elevates it above the output valve on the magazine. Resulting pull of the trigger is a nice solid clunk. This is how WE Tech were able to give their MP5s the realistic hammer drop on empty feature. Negatively, you'd have to manually flick the magazine tabs downward on the loaded magazine. It takes a fraction of a second to do, but it's one of those things where if you forget to do it while you're reloading, you'll get a click instead of a bang. With the addition of a piece of hooked Velcro tape layered on the corresponding location within the magwell, it engages this part for you, and you don't have to concern yourself with priming the tab on the magazine prior to firing. It's a superbly simple mod to perform. It costs basically nothing and takes only a few minutes of testing to determine the correct level of layers for the desired results. During the colder times of the year, the thin O-ring on the baseplate of the magazine would begin to let out a tiny hiss of gas. One must-have addition is brought to me from the Airsoft Archives YouTube channel. He uses a slightly larger O-ring to seal the gas tank, so with that I upgraded to a 21.5mm inner diameter by 1mm thickness O-ring that he recommended, and just like that, the magazines were sealed. Cheers buddy. Ula from the HRC group inspired me with this next one. I polished the hammer and corresponding surface on the bolt carrier so that it gains a fraction more speed. How much of a boost it delivers? I don't know, never really looked into it. My MP5 seems to be displaying a healthy snap, so it's definitely worth doing. This next one might be a placebo, or it just might be a major contributor in putting this MP5 back on top as the best gas blowback MP5.
I never left.
I upgraded my nozzle with an X-ring. This single nitrile upgrade provides an enhanced seal over the traditional low ring, by having a dual O-ring design in one, and that's all thanks to its X-shaped cross-section. I've been using it for a few years, and it's always given me the impression that it's helped increase the punch to the blowback operation. Like every shot feels sharper all for it. The thing is, I never compiled any data to confirm my suspicions, until now. I have an AMG high flow valve on one of my magazines, so it elevates the blowback experience even more, at a cost of depleting the fuel tank quicker. If I were that bothered, I'd upgrade the other magazines, but as the MP5 runs great as it is, it's not mandatory. Initially I installed the shorter maple leaf inner barrel to bite off a large chunk of speed in order to make it a softer hitting CQB shooter, all while keeping the gas system nice and hot. At times it was hitting over 360 FPS, and I didn't want to castrate the gas system just to take off 60 feet per second, hence a shorter length inner barrel. The concept works really well, it's just not a very good barrel. Finally, I have a quad quantum gas blowback rubber which I bought recently. We'll see the results later on, but first let's see what this MP5 is doing on the Chrono with Jeff Bio 3.2s, and a completely stock magazine. They start off hitting below 250 FPS. Bear in mind that at the time of recording this data it's still using that pistol length inner barrel. From the first shot to the last, it drops 36.8 FPS. The average FPS was 226.5, and average joule output was 0.75. The figures here are stable, to be fair. Between the shots we don't see a massive drop in speed. They're mostly separated by 1 or 2 FPS, and even then the most it loses from one shot to the next is only 4 feet, and that's at the beginning. Seeing a broader view of these figures, the FPS creates a steady decline as the gas escapes the magazine, with a few fluctuations above the normal descent. The illustration using joules follows a similar trend. Yes, it's a 10-year-old platform, but the gas system is quite stable. Even before I began using that X-ring, this MP5 could deliver streams of auto-fire across distances, and its results on the Chrono like this, which explains why. Here's a screenshot from the last series of figures I compiled for the round count per gas fill compared to the VFC MP5. Running the test again with those improvements I mentioned earlier, and the results are astonishing. With 1 shot per second in a cozy 22 degrees Celsius room temperature, 5 seconds gave me 72 BBs fired. 10 seconds 139 BBs were fired, 15 seconds 203 shots, and 20 seconds saw the WE Apache blast out 251 BBs, with the system totally out of puff at 252. Now that's a far cry from its previous set of numbers, and stands as the most I've ever been able to fire out of this system. The polishing of the bolt carrier and the hammer, combined with the quad O-ring on the nozzle, has proven to be super effective at making those gas charges go further than before. Of course your miles may vary, and I wouldn't particularly recommend overcharging beyond 12 seconds. Still, it's interesting to see. Running this SMG is a delightful experience, and the sound cuts through the silence with a loud bark. After all this time, it hasn't diminished in performance. The Apache just keeps on rocking, punching its small, lightweight bolt carrier back into your shoulder in the way that it does. It's not a heavy kick, as it's not a GBBR. SMGs are not that intense in the shoulder, and the Apache does well to replicate this action. The weight of its stamped steel receiver soaks up some of the feedback, and even more so if you're using old school accessories like this. Accuracy when I was using the Maple Leaf Autobot rubber and the Crazy Jet inner barrel was absurd. At a mere 20 meters, it peppered the whole sheet with 3.2s with no precision at all. On my last order from Action Airsoft, I thought I would see what the Quad Quantum rubber was like, so I added it to the cart along with a Unicorn 6.03 inner barrel. It was a small order, and the components were cheap, so why not? I had no idea what they were going to be going in until the parts came along and I looked at this MP5, knowing full well I would be doing its 8-year review soon. Now they're living inside this MP5. Putting the same 3.2s into the same holes, or thereabouts, is a generous improvement from before. That'll do. As I mentioned earlier, the range of the MP5 is okay for a little SMG, despite the gusts of wind that I was receiving at the time. With my old Maple Leaf set installed, everything within 50 meters was fair game. I'm using Jeff Bayou 3s at this stage, and it's over-hopping them. Even with the Autobot 50-degree rubber, I might have been able to get away with using heavier rounds. These clips were filmed on a mild day in June 2023, at roughly 18 degrees Celsius, and given those fair conditions, the WE MP5 can deliver fully automatic up to this distance without breaking a sweat. You can see I was driving the MP5 down as I had that overhop. Had I have dialed in the adjustment a bit more accurately, it would have levelled the target. As I had adjusted it just over that flat point, this indicates its ability to consistently apply ample gas pressure for the whole stream of auto fire. Pushing it as far as I can towards 70 meters with the quad hop and unicorn barrel set, and it just about manages 60 to 65 meters. That's okay, it's not a GBBR, and I don't expect it to achieve long range. It's made for storming rooms, getting up close and personal. I covered cold weather performance before in my MP5 versus video, when I submerged the magazine in freezing, slushy water. The WE MP5 was able to get off a few shots before it was out for the count. What did I expect was going to happen? In the real world, using it with proper management can get you through. The temperature on this day was 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, and propane allowed it to chug through. Luckily, there's some winterproofing that can be done with these MP5s by swapping out your recoil spring and hammer spring for AMG's winter spring set, as well as using a higher PSI gas. The best thing that I could recommend for cooler weather is to get a positive gas charge right from the offset, which is tough to accomplish in open air safe zones with no heating. What helps immeasurably is when your gas bottle is warmer than the vessel you intend to fill, and this will ensure the best gas transfer. Now you might laugh at this, but trust me, the shit works. I use an insulated cool bag and a hot water bottle, with my propane can stowed away in this dump pouch, and then wrapped around with this hot water bottle. It maintains a temperature that creates that positive gas charge with your cold magazines, allowing them to swallow fresh gas like it's dying of thirst. You can further incubate the magazines with those hand warmers. In fact, last winter I was actually using a pair of those electric USB pocket heaters. They do okay, although ultimately 20 seconds outside of your pouch the magazines are cold again. Still, at 4 degrees Celsius with propane and a cold WE Apache, it still worked for me. Hit! The WE MP5 gas blowback SMG. Now a considerable amount of time has passed, it's time to see where it succeeds and fails. Right away I want to mention those 45 round magazines. Having a platform which can keep you on the field longer due to the vast capacity for its type is wonderful. I found it opens you up to taking a more proactive approach on the field. Whether it be direct action, providing cover fire, its capacity makes you feel more comfortable. Then there's the choice of magazines too. We have the standard open front, or the exposed BB channel magazines like I have in this video, and then they have the classic style, where it's all completely closed in. They've also got the short, stubby magazines, and they've even got drum magazines, so they've done really well to cater for their Apache series. The dry fire mode on the magazines makes owning this particular MP5 such a joy, helping with function testing, training, or generally playing about. The core firing system has been solid. In all this time, the only event which shut the gun down was while making this video, when the nozzle spring snapped. Outside of that, it hasn't suffered any catastrophic internal damage, it's never jammed on me, and feeds a variety of brand BBs, even BIOS. To add to that, I've never had any peculiar flaws relating to inconsistent hop-up, the bolt stop not working, firing fully automatic in semi, nothing like that. Besides the parts which I replaced that I mentioned earlier, it has been a tank. It's a quality feeling MP5. I know it's not a one-to-one accurate replica or representation of the real MP5 like VFCs, with all their finer aesthetics and authentic hallmarks, but I'm talking in a sense of its well-made construction. It's robust, it's heavy. Yes, it's a WE, but aside from the remarks about the front sight and also the typical play on the A3 stock rails, the platform as a whole really does feel like a tank. If it were a real one, you would feel confident in using it in an aggressive manner to violently jab into the bad guy's ribcage and open it apart. That's how rugged the frame feels. The function controls too, like the charging action, magazine release, stock release catch, equally extend that robust feeling of quality. You'll enjoy using this MP5, it's a fun gas blowback.
Sounds like fun.
It is.
Its snappy action causes a nice little flick as you're running it. The short window of operation with the trigger will enable you to quickly run off semi-automatic with minimal effort. And since smoothing out the working parts and using that X-ring, it really has become an enthusiastic SMG that loves being slapped and shot. Speaking of which, bringing your Sean Connery slapping hand down on the charging handle, and feeling that heavy block of steel shunt forward from that stiff recoil spring is yet unmatched in gas blowback MP5s, and I promise you, it's better than its competitors. Its ability to propel streams of auto-fire out to extended distances is something that surprised me, coming from a gas blowback manufacturer that internet experts say is crap. The bolt stop system makes it the best gas MP5 to train on at the moment. If you're into perfecting your drills, click empty, lock open, remove mag, insert fresh one, release the bolt, etc. VFC have certainly taken back the MP5 market with the version 2 and thus claimed a few third-party makers that churn out upgrades and accessories. However, WE still have a few friends. AMG with their winter springs and valves, WE Tech, that's We with the eyes, have made handguards and fire control components. Then there's also Z parts, and even those fancy B&T style Bowmaster stocks can be made to work with these MP5s. I just hope we can sweet talk clutch precision into making us some aluminium bolts. Lastly, they basically make the entire MP5 family, so if the A3 is not to your liking, the fixed A2 is available, as is the SDs, with their own complement of A3 or A2 stocked models. And of course, there's the Ks and KPDWs. Now, the negative aspects of the WE MP5. So I think it's an honourable mention. It bears no real threat to the system itself, it's merely annoying. The front sight assembly having its sloppy play. It's not much more than a regrettable quirk on WE's part that the front sight is only anchored down upon that groove on the 3-lug flash hider. Its only saving grace is being able to detach the barrel set within about 30 seconds. Their burst mechanism having a memory is a disappointing byproduct of their trigger pack. Switching over to 3-shot burst, it might do 1 or 2 shots before it resets for a full 3. It's not the end of the world, it is what it is. Now to the focal list of negatives, and let's talk about the weight. Thanks to the steel receiver and abnormally chunky magazines, it's a surprisingly heavy SMG without adding anything to it. Same with the Kurtz. Next up we have the soft metal components. As I mentioned at the start, the strength of WE's metal components are famous for being of a certain standard. The parts which I expected to lose over the ages haven't skipped a beat. I'm getting a sense of surprising equilibrium within the very heart of its system. It's those other, lesser vitals that have fallen short. The hop-up chamber being somewhat fragile, the burst ratchet pool, and the long-term wear on the stock rail slots. In recent years, I've seen the bolt carriers crack under normal use. To see one example, YouTuber Samurai Jutsu showed his bolt carrier breaking apart. Now, this is a case-by-case basis, and it might not even be something you'll likely see. Luckily, I haven't had this happen with my A3 nor my Kurtz, but if it can happen on his, it could certainly happen with mine. The sum of 8 years and all I have to mention is the thread for the nozzle guide screw. While third-party upgrades exist in several forms, presently it's lacking in the ones which would make all the difference. Even things like the screw, which holds the front sling swivel in place. It's so easily chewed up with a simple flathead, and all you're doing is tightening it. That sling point isn't made of steel either, and for a heavy SMG it would be beneficial to have a piece which would match that payload. I found it to be a little temperamental with gas filling. For example, if the gas bottle and magazine are at a similar temperature, the pressure can equalize and transfer an inconsequential amount, resulting in only having enough puff to blast out half a magazine, although that's not really restricted to WE magazines. These simply prefer it when the gas bottle is warmer. External appearances aren't anything to brag about. You will find no HK MP5 markings or highly defined details on the bolt head, just a blank slate. The polymer isn't the likeness you would find on genuine HK plastics. Here the plastic is rugged, yet rough to touch, and the pictograms are too glossy. It's not completely hideous, it's simply not refined, nor finished to a higher standard of its competitor. What annoyed me is the paint on the trigger flaking off, so if you're very particular about these certain things, it'll drive you bananas. Real steel compatibility is limited. My Real Surefire 628 slips on perfectly. It's only when it comes down to using real grip frames that's where you'll run into incompatibility issues, and you'll have to get out the tools, or just live with the shiny pictograms of the original trigger housing. In all the options available for the Apache series, SEF style grip frames are not among them. Shame. As of 2025, the WE Tech Apache continues to be a sound option for the field. After my 3-year break, it didn't make me struggle with the reintegration. In fact, the roomy capacity allowed me to not only exist in-game for longer, but actively participate in fire and manoeuvre, and even somewhat suppressive fire. The open front magazines offer advantages and disadvantages. The ingress of dirt, debris, and even BB strikes are hazards one has to be mindful of. On the other hand, it serves as a practical way to keep track of your round count, which I'm personally all for. Yeah, it's nice to have the realism, but it is also nice to know at a glance exactly where you are with things. It's good they decided to offer the classic fully enclosed magazines for those guys that enjoy the realism. They really have thought of everything. If you want to get into gas blowback MP5s and you remain on the fence as to which platform to adopt, even after watching my Versus video, I would say the WE should not be disregarded. Sure, it's not without its own quirks. There isn't a gas blowback made today that can boast it's totally flawless. The few that this one has to its name really are minor inconveniences which won't get in the way of you enjoying yourself. As you can see with mine, if you spend some time performing tweaks like I did, the performance can really excel. If you're looking for your first gas blowback SMG, the simplicity in its design, from the magazines to the trigger pack, the hop-up chamber, and the bolt carrier assembly, it provides a logically basic foundation to build your gas blowback awareness on. Even if stripping down the most intensive parts, like the trigger pack, may seem like a daunting process to begin with, but once you strip out the hammer grip, there really isn't a lot else to it, and you'll be surprised how quickly you will pick it up. Forgiving the less than stellar externals, the Apache series has more value in it than meets the eye. To me, it's a rough and ready platform that you can throw around CQB sites without caring about scratching it up. And those are the reasons why I have both the standard sized A3 version and the K. They're straight up fun guns. Guys, thank you so much for watching my video. We've covered a lot of ground today, and if you made it this far, you're an absolute legend, and I cannot thank you enough for joining me. Don't forget to head over to badabingcoffee.com if you'd like to try some delicious coffee. Next time I could be sharing one of your photos. Here's a customer's submitted shot of his VFC Volta PPKS next to my Colombian medium and Honduran dark roasts. Thanks Dean, I still love these pictures. Of course, if you keep seeing my videos and have yet to subscribe, join me and enjoy some gun and coffee porn. Not only on YouTube, but also on Facebook and on Instagram. Until next time, look after yourselves.